Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Fully Managed podcast. Thank you so much for joining me, Jeff. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Great to be here.
Thank you. Alrighty, so today we are going to start with a game. This game is catered to you and the nature of your work, so I hope that you enjoy it. I thought it was kind of a fun new segment, so I hope that it'll be fun for you. All right, so this game is called Go Green and Stay Green. So So a lot of companies, I'm sure you were completely aware of this, a lot of companies and businesses launch green campaigns with maybe good intentions. Sometimes we can't prove if they actually have them, but maybe good intentions, but they kind of miss the mark because they forget about something else, or they're doing one thing green, but their overall, foundation is not effectively working towards the agenda in which they're saying that they're supporting. Um, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you some sample campaigns. They're all theoretical. They probably have happened or not. And you're going to tell me how else they can be more conscious, if that
Sure.
makes sense.
Yeah, this is interesting. I like
Does that sound
this.
fun? Okay, cool. So I am going to start. This first one is a major burger chain launches plant-based Fridays promotion where they have plant-based burgers. What else do you think could make that more green?
Well, the obvious thing would be to not just make it on Fridays. It's funny because like I just saw that McDonald's just launched their veggie burger here in Canada too. And
Still
I
don't have
find
that
it,
here.
yeah, like the plant-based stuff is coming up a lot. I think the main thing is you can get someone to try it once, but if the product itself isn't any good, it's toast. Um, so I see a lot of those types of products hitting the market. It's funny, I just had a chocolate like this. Sometimes vegan chocolates and all these things are could be good and bad. And I was like, wow, the packaging's beautiful, but I'm like, the chocolate itself
Awful.
wasn't good at all. And I'm like, great, you got a conversion one time, but like awareness only gets you so far. You kind of need brand devotion. So hopefully the brand itself has already established itself with other principles that people can align to. But if the product itself isn't very good, um, you're not going to have much luck. So I always find with those things, with those new product launches, spend a little bit more time focus testing, make sure before it's ready to go that you can ensure that it's not just going to be a flash in the pan. A lot of markets will test something in a smaller market. So I live in Atlantic, Canada, and that's a test market for a lot of quick service restaurants. So those type of things are always good to do. But yeah, beyond that, just make sure you have an audience that's ready for a product like that and understand that the internet exists. And if you don't do other stuff with your company, people can Google it pretty quickly and find out how altruistic or greenwashing this thing is that you're doing. So consumers, they like to say they're stupid, but I think nowadays they're pretty tech savvy and they can uncover quite a lot.
Yeah, and I think that the product actually having to be good is a really fair point because I think that's something that people, oddly enough, you'd think that it'd be the obvious thing, but oddly enough, people
No,
do not do. I I was vegetarian for 6 years, and I there are things that I found when I was vegetarian that I still eat
yep,
because they were good, but
yep.
there are many things that I do not still eat
Yep.
or
My wife's vegetarian, and like when we buy burgers, and there's certain brands that I just know, like these ones actually taste good, these other ones are
yeah.
dry. Um, so yeah, like again, you can sell something once or twice to somebody, but if you make a great product, it kind of sells itself. Those communities of people, once you have that devotion, will tell you buy this one instead of this one. So
Exactly. Yeah, there is that is definitely something that people should consider, especially when releasing a new product, like understanding what the needs of people are, especially if you're trying to break into a very um yeah, yeah, crowded. And also I think that there are many people that are like I wouldn't say anti-vegetarian, but like very reactionary to new products like that being introduced in a landscape in which they have like they always have the same expectations for. So it's like you really have to sell it and make it good if you want to break into a place that people would already be have an adverse reaction to
Yeah.
that new
And it's
introduced product.
very, especially nowadays, very price conscious, right? Some of those vegetarian options are quite expensive. So if it's someone who's on a budget and they want to move in that route, it's sometimes they can get price right out of it. So giving maybe like if you're going to do a smaller version of it, that's a cheaper menu price would be a good way to get people to try it and not worry about spending like $15 on something that's no good.
That's really smart. Yeah, like they could do sliders, you know.
Yeah.
If you want to give this campaign to anyone that you're working with, you know, I just made it up, so I give you full authority. Okay, I'll give you one more because we actually that one was a really good open a can of worms. I like that. So I'll give you one more so that we're not taking too much with the game, but I really love that I'm getting a glimpse into your mind and how you're thinking about things. Okay. So the next one is a smartphone brand runs a For the Planet ad campaign, but they release a new phone every year.
Yeah, just don't do it. We like it's again back to my earlier point. The internet exists. I think it's well documented that like where some of these things are manufactured, the batteries they need, the earth metals they need. You can make those commitments, and you see the biggest brands in the world doing that at their like one big show a year when they have to release new products, and they're going to tell everyone about all their commitments. We've all seen them. We all tune into them, and then we wait and see if they follow up on it. So it's better than doing nothing, I must admit. It's very easy. It's very easy to dismiss some of these corporations that are some of them coming close to trillion-dollar companies to not pledging more. But in reality, until they're governed by government and there's more policies, they don't have to do anything. Um, so as long as it seems altruistic, we're all aware that greenwashing is a thing, and I think most brands are guilty of it. Um, yeah, maybe have a better device return program. I know a lot of them do. I see larger brands, but then just I think transparency nowadays goes a long way. So at that board of directors level, find out what type of levels of transparency they can have. Are you going to be honest when everything gets returned to a store? Does it get thrown into a dumpster, then shipped off to like a third world country where it's stripped down for parts again? If so, tell people and tell them how you're trying to mitigate those precious metals from just getting tossed into the ocean.
No, that's a fair point. It's a fair point to be made that even campaigns that as a whole maybe that brand is not doing good for the environment, but the fact that they're doing anything at all when no one's holding them to that is, maybe you don't look at them in a positive light in general because maybe that is just performative, but at the same time it is a positive way of looking at things because you know if that's hundreds of thousands of dollars, that's without that, there would be, or if they do some kind of donation campaign, I mean, it's still a positive way of looking at the fact that, like, at least this is happening. Just like, someone who is in the top 1% is still maybe opening a charity or so. Like, at least there's a charity now.
There's something. I think if you have a realization that as these corporations exist, they're going to inevitably get bad press. They're going to be under the microscope for everything they do. If they're publicly traded, it's even worse. But, like I said before, some of these corporations have a mass following of people that no matter what they do, they're going to buy that product. But at a certain point, there's larger markets out there as they open up around the world, and creating that devotion to a brand takes a lot more than just doing like here's a new phone or here's a new device, and by the way, we're gonna plant trees. People want to see it across the whole company, not just like a campaign, because people have a memory nowadays. If you do one thing this year and don't do anything the next year, people might question that. And I think the brands that have established core missions that they don't tread too far away from are the ones that are developing those really strong brand devotions from customers. And then that's your best When you get word of mouth and happy customers recommending your brand, you can't ask for anything else. Like one of my favorite, Patagonia, they don't do a lot of advertising, but if you drop that name, everyone would go, "Yeah, they're a good company. No, they do good." Even if they don't know what that company does, they've done such an amazing job of establishing themselves in this sphere, in this world, that people would respect them if they did do something. If they said, "We're going to donate this," people would believe it. But if another company that's maybe not as transparent as them, they wouldn't believe them. So,
Yeah, like brand loyalty does go a long way, whether you're a morally good brand, for lack of better phrasing, or not. And it's nice that even those morally ambiguous ones sometimes do some good once in a while, because that's better than not doing it at all.
exactly.
Um,
Yeah,
but yeah, I mean, I think that there's still a necessity to hold brands accountable when they're not doing things that are good, regardless of if they do once in a while do those good things.
best thing about that as a customer is you have all the money. Literally, don't buy
Hmm.
it. If you don't agree with what they do, you have the power not to buy it.
Exactly. Yeah.
Pretty simple. But, people spend billions of dollars advertising to people to tell them they need it anyway. So,
So going into more of your work of why you have the authority to speak about these things, some people are probably wondering. um, so you lead as a creative at an agency and climate-focused creative community.
yeah,
How does your mindset kind of shift between both of those like work cycles? Like one might be more commercial client
sure.
work, but one is purpose driven. Like, do
Yeah.
you use the same lens for both? Like, tell me more about that.
Yes and no. I think anyone in any sort of management space where you're managing people, whether it's in a creative industry or at a bank, part of your job is those people, and obviously true to your clients as well. Um, so it's easier to take different lenses, different parts of the day. So if I'm managing projects for an agency, I'm still conscious again of like maybe what we're doing and how, again, as we talked about, possibly greenwashing if that comes up. But really, I'm ultimately just trying to make the best work possible for that client. And if by doing so, that can give me more free time to pursue and add some time to my other endeavors in more climate focused work, I'll do it that way. There's certainly a lens, as we get further into it, everyone keeps asking about AI. I've been asked like repeatedly, how does this work with like B corporation status and how does this affect the climate? And the short answer is like, I don't really know. I think everyone thinks it could be bad. Um, so I've created some policies that I adhere to on both sides, like whether it's working with a team and be like, look, if we're going to use it this way so we're not wasting energy. Don't just use it when you've got a blank page and can't get started. That's for your own brain to start thinking about. Um, so ultimately, really, the two are the same, because you're always just trying to solve a problem. Um, and if it's a climate related problem or if it's someone trying to get you to sign up for a new product like your veggie burger or whatever it is, um, there's still an outcome. And I look at it as like, what can I do to inspire my team or myself to get the best work? How do I remove any barriers that might be in their way so that they can focus on the job at hand and not have to worry about those things? Discussions come up too, like in terms of when we go to launch a campaign, we'll take a look, or I'll take a look at like a macro lens and media landscapes as well. Some of them are coming under hot fire now, Spotify, and like they're always in the news. Some of them are like, okay, they're donating to this or they're not doing this or their practices. So that's something that's just constantly being reevaluated to ensure for a client, any client, that nothing can come back at them later, if they're seeing advertising on a certain platform. But yeah, the lenses or the way to jump between the two can be tricky. Um, the climate related stuff is a passion thing, because in a day to day 9 to 5 world, I might not get the opportunity to always pick and choose the clients I get to work on. And some of them might be ones that maybe wouldn't always align with my personal values. But like as we've mentioned before, any client that might not have a brand mission that's super great for the world still has the ability to try and do something to make it better. Um, So I always bring in the opportunities to those clients and be like, hey, you've asked for this. Have you considered maybe a campaign or an idea in this realm as well? And it's not my job to force that onto them. It's just to educate them about the possibilities and how whatever we're doing might resonate with the customer or our clients. But yeah, they're the same. Like it's the same brain, um, but each problem is different. Like you could sell a cell phone, or you could try and get people to save the Amazon. The same part of the brain gets activated. You just have to go about it in totally different ways. It's persuasion, right? I think climate change is a communication issue, and it's going to be a communication problem. No one wants to see the doom and gloom anymore. You can't show someone like animals running away from a forest fire. We see too much content every day that's negative, and they just zone
Yeah,
out.
apathy is on
It's
the rise
gone.
for
Yeah,
sure. Yeah.
it's gone. So like people want good news. The news cycle is filled with bad news. Doom scrolling is a thing. So I look at it all advertising, communications as a form of entertainment. Put a little bit of joy, a little bit of hope in someone's life. Maybe it is get to try this new veggie burger only on Fridays. Maybe that's the spark. That's all they need. Um, but yeah, like for me, it doesn't really change. It just changes how I channel my thinking.
It's an important thing that you just said about how like people don't want to see bad, if that makes sense. Like it's not something, it's very easily avoidable to just scroll past something that you don't want to see. Um but it's also, it makes people not feel great. And so I think that some of the best campaigns are ones that, and maybe it's not always um what's the word I'm looking for? Like completely fruitful by the end of it, but the fact that campaigns that kind of give you that gratification personally but are doing a good thing as a whole is are some of the best, because it almost like tricks you into being a good person or like paying attention to the issue while not getting super in your head about it if you do care, or not caring at all and just like, I think that it has to seem easy for the consumer to do something sometimes in order to contribute to something.
100%. It's daunting, like when I started applying more of my creativity to climate related issues, you realize they're global and massive in scale, right? So like you can try and change the climate, but like the problem is so massive, you really need governments to step in and do it. I believe COP30 is happening right now in Brazil. I don't know when this is going to air, but like policies need to be made there. I know there's like media companies that won't advertise certain companies that are bad for the environment or don't have a good carbon footprint. So there's steps everyone can take. As we mentioned earlier, you have the power with your wallet to not buy products. Um, I think as the future of this business proceeds and AI creeps in more and more, and companies start realizing that they'll lose a customer if they don't seem like a genuine self anymore and they're not true to who they are. Um, those sort of narratives about that brand and what they actually stand for is going to become more important. You can see it. You can look at like global trends of brands too. When there's a natural disaster on like certain brands, they start going up. Some of them are like, okay, bottles of water are going to sell. Is that a good thing? No, but it's a necessity at that point. But like it's an opportunity for another brand at that time to be like, hey, we don't sell bottles of water, we sell cartons. Let's donate 500,000 of them to this disaster relief fund, right? So not everything has to be. Some things can be done altruistically that also are great for your brand. Um, it's not like it's funny. We work in advertising, but especially nowadays, I find not everything has to be an ad. Like a simple tweet sometimes, just a word of mouth or an act of kindness that someone does can sometimes have a way better or bigger lasting effect for a brand than trying to do a campaign that you rush out and a bunch of people have to approve. So it is something that I think is a balancing act. There's so much content that people get exposed to every single seconds, and like you said, they scroll by it in a heartbeat. So getting them to care can be tough, but that's our job, is to persuade them to care and show them that we care as a brand. Like like I said, people have the internet. They can Google your company. They can Google your board of directors. They can see you at a rock concert. They can, like everything is out in the open these days. So transparency, I think, can make or break certain brands.
100%. And even like, well, speaking of that balancing act in a different sense, I think that a lot of people or companies as a whole, or maybe just leaders of companies, worry that they're going to fall behind when they don't implement practices that are maybe not sustainable a lot of the time. What is kind of your commentary on that or opinion on it of like how people can stay above the curve as well as like effectively do their work at the same pace as, maybe other companies they see doing this or that, um, while also feeling like they're staying true to their moral values.
Yeah. It's funny. I was watching a show the other day, and a country singer said something that resonated. He's like, my father was a liberal until he saved up enough money to be conservative. Right. So like a lot of the times these dilemmas come down to financial stability. Um, you can make inroads into only working with a certain type of clientele that's good for the environment or does good things, but there might be a financial consequence to that. So you might have to weigh it out. If you as a manager are looking after 8 staff and you say we want to go after this company, but it means that we would take a hit in terms of our moral standings for what we believe in, then you take that hit, or maybe you have to lay off half that staff. So there's always a human element, which is always why these things become so delicate. Um, and I'm always super proud of any client or brand that says, you know what, we don't care if we lose money, if we don't get as many customers, we're sticking to our guns, and this is the direction we're taking this company. And I think in the short term, it can be painful, but in the long term, from my experience, some of those brands, they end up flourishing, right? Because again, that devotion, if like it's like how I lead, I try and lead by example. I try and set a good example for my team members or whoever I'm working with. If I don't do that, then they've got nothing to follow or to mimic against. So brands that do it and are outspoken about it, people kind of believe in that. There's some clients, you see it on their website, says 1% back to these green initiatives. They give 1% back. We were a B corporation, and those things give you a certain standard. It means you can't work with certain industries. They're red flags. And if you do, you lose points, and then maybe you lose your certification. So there is a balance. Like I've personally in the past made decisions not to go after certain business because they didn't align with personal beliefs or beliefs I figured like certain the companies would pair well with. And those are big decisions. Like I'm putting my job on the line to stand up for what I believe in. But it's a personal decision every brand has to make, right? Like maybe by losing money, you go out of business and then you can't help anyone. So it's tricky. It's very tricky. It's unfortunate, that sometimes that money kind of capitalism rules everything. Um, but there's companies that do it and they manage to do it quite well. I think like I said, it goes back to that transparency. If people believe what you say you're doing is true, then you're probably going to turn out okay. Like there's a lot of brands out there that I support, and I don't get their financial reports, but they're still in business, and they seem to have good products, and they're doing good financially. So like the business model is proven that it can work. It's just a lot of extra time and energy that you have to devote to it. And it's the same as anything in life, right? If it's worth doing, it's worth doing right. You can make a quick buck really easily. You can put some AI slop out there and sell your veggie burger thing and be done with it and move on with your life. Or you can change the whole way the production line of how that veggie burger is made, which the customer never sees, but is important to the company. So
Exactly.
it's a scale, and like I think every business, every individual or board of directors or C-level suite people, they have to make those decisions because the customer is ultimately going to make it for you.
people are really attached to a story that's good too. Like on top of that, of like, I think when you are doing good, I think that effective representation of that is really important for gaining more clients or consumers or whatever you want to call them. Because I think that a lot of people are willing to spend more money on something if they know, and like that's that transparency that you're talking about, like know how something is done
Yep.
and like every step of it and how hard it was to maybe create that, or like what how much money it went into creating that and doing it the right way, so to
Yeah.
speak. And that's something that's really important too, because I think there's so many sustainable brands that don't properly represent themselves, so they just waste money rather than and waste is, you know, not a fair word, I guess, but
Sure.
like they don't make money because they don't sell themselves well enough,
Yep.
and that's super important too, and that's where creative comes in.
Yeah. And, we live in a world too. I think there's always been data there, but now it's more readily available than ever. And you can trust the data. Like you can follow a supply line. They can tell you, like, I have brands of clothing that I buy, and that you can, like, on the garment itself, or when you get it, it'll tell you which factory it was made in Morocco, and it'll show you like a picture of the person that sewed it together. And like it's truthful because you go to their website and they back it up. And then there's other ones that are in every shopping mall around the world, and they might make these claims, but if you're still in a fast fashion industry, it's tough, right? You can make the claims, but it's a tough line to walk. But again, back to an earlier points, in the economy now, everything's very expensive, and if you want to do something that's ethical and sustainable, it's going to drive the price up. We hear it. The biggest campaign slogan in the last 12 years is "Make America Great Again," right? And they want to bring manufacturing back to America, but are Americans willing to pay $90 for a T-shirt that's sewn in Arkansas? And the answer is no. Um, so you have to find a balance. I think consumerism has gone a little too far to begin with. Like, we don't need a lot of the stuff we buy. We don't really need. It could be a comfort purchase. It could just be a purchase because you feel like you need to do it. Um, I think a lot of these companies could benefit from not just destroying a lot of their products, but finding suppliers that can get it to secondhand stores and vintage shops and places like that. Those trends are growing too, right? We see the explosion of these recycle apps and third party sellers like Poshmark and other ones that you can buy and sell your own clothing online. So there's a whole new ecosystem and economy that's being developed by customers' needs because they're waking up to the wastefulness of some of these other industries, and they're taking the power upon themselves. And then eventually, some sort of corporation will buy it, and then people will leave that product, move on to the next thing. Um,
It's the circular economy is one that we would prefer to have, but I think it's
100%.
also, but then there's the other side of the coin, which we're getting kind of philosophical too, I think. But that's the fun part. Is that with things like secondhand stores, thrifting, things in mind, there's also overconsumption on that end, which maybe might be less bad than you know um something going into a landfill or whatever it may be. But then
Yeah.
sometimes it ends up there anyway. Just it takes like one more step because people are also over consuming in those places as well. Where if we all maybe just got like purchased clothing when we needed it rather than it being trendy or whatever it may
Yeah.
be.
I don't know.
Yeah, so it's like the whole thing. But so well, like on a positive note, I mean, like I think all of what we're talking about is fairly positive, but sometimes it can feel negative. Um, so having worked on with some major brands and meaningful social campaigns that you have done, um, do you have an example of a product that maybe surprised you with how effective it was for making some kind of change?
Uh, that I've worked on personally, or just in general?
Um, if you can think of one personally, that would be great. But if you have one in general that's like at the top of your mind, I would love to talk about that too.
Yeah. Well, I did a campaign a long time ago for like the Canadian Red Cross. I think everyone knows who the Red Cross is, and it was it was a system again back to people not having a lot of money. It was right around the financial after the financial crash in 2008, so I think it was launched around 2010, and they were trying to raise money for donations to the Red Cross. And it was one of those things when you looked at the data when people like didn't have any money to give, we're like, well, that sucks. It's true, but we need to raise money, and this product is so great. Like Red Cross helps everybody. Um, so we developed a platform that was like called the Volunteer Network. So basically, like you could like I would be like, I'll bake you a tray of cookies, and you'll give me $6, which then goes to a donation. So like if you couldn't give the money, like I'll draw you a painting of a guy holding a frog, and then you'll donate $50. So like it was one of those wild ideas that we just drew on a with a marker on a board and just like worked on other stuff and then kept going back to it because we're like we don't know how we could actually make this work because it actually has to be a database and a system.
Yeah.
um, and then we figured it out, we did it, we launched it, all these radio stations and media things got involved. And it was going really well, and then the tsunami hit in Japan, and all of the efforts for the Red Cross was immediately diverted. But we were very fortunate that we had done it in enough time that we had already started raising enough money, but then we're quickly able to apply the messaging into the platform to make sure that the money people are going to give was going to go directly to the tsunami relief program. So it was almost like a product we created ourselves because there's a whole new platform for people to give donations. And we honestly didn't think it was going to work. We're like, no one's going to use this. It's only going to work on a micro scale. And we started it off, and like I put out some queries myself, like you could be like, and this is what I did, I'm like, I would pay $50 for someone to paint me a picture of a hot dog riding a magical unicorn. And then like some artist saw it and was like, this is hilarious, I'm totally going to do that. And then the transaction went through, and I'm like, okay, this platform and this system works. And I didn't think it was going to work. I was trying to look for it, I'm like, I have that painting around somewhere, but like it caught on really quickly, and it was going to launch all the way across, I think, Canada. And then the tsunami hit and everything changed. But we still were able to use this thing that basically I thought was not going to go anywhere. And for a client and company that already does so good for like every local community, and channel into an effort that all of a sudden everyone was paying attention to.
Yeah, no, that's such an incredible idea because it kind of refers to that consumerism of like people still need things in times of strife, and or they don't, but they like the serotonin boost of getting
Hmm.
things in times of strife. I mean, like, there's so many studies that are done on like when the economy is really bad, people are actually sometimes buying like less valuable silly things just to make them happy
Yep.
during the time in which, because it's affordable, it seems more affordable to buy silly things to make you happy rather than things that, it's like the housing crisis and everything, of like studies of that, of like people can buy a TV more affordably now, but they can't afford to buy a home, so they'd rather buy a huge TV. And it's like things like that, but that's like it that uses that kind of case study as a helpful tool to kind of translate the money that people are spending anyway and then just have it go to a good cause.
Exactly. And again, like we didn't know, like we brought in a developer and we, tried to cobble together an explanation. Yeah, yeah, it's like a marketplace and you can bid on stuff and ask for stuff. And he was like, I don't know what you're talking about, but give me a day or two. And he came back a few days and had a prototype ready to go. And we're like, okay, it works. Um, Sick, yeah, wicked. um, and then it was just scale from there. So it was a weird thing because it was a product that didn't exist. We created it, and then it was very successful. And we didn't think it would do what it was intended to do because it was going to be a tricky thing. We're like, will people sign up to donate their time, or their skills? But it was a lot of fun. And then the extra added thing that became interesting for us when we started developing a campaign to tell people about this new ecosystem platform we had created, I was like, well, if we're calling it the volunteer market, we should probably get someone to volunteer to do all the advertising for it. So I used like my network of people and just reached out to artists and be like, hey, we're doing this thing for the Red Cross, would you volunteer to design a poster? And
Oh,
pretty
that's
much
incredible.
everyone said yes. So like all these different local artists and people donated their time to do it, and thus it just kept rolling. Um, so yeah, that's sort of one that always comes to top of minds and stuff like that.
That's incredible. I mean, it's really nice to see something like that work out as well as build community at the same time, because that's something that, the more things that you do related to that, I think that the more like a community feels like close and connected and more likely to like be able to gather to do something like that again. I think that's a really amazing way of it going into fruition. Well, I do have to end here because we're a little over time, but this was an absolutely such a fun topic. This is a really fun topic. Not only did we get to talk about philosophy, but like we got to talk about your work and the positive effect that it has, but also just moral foundations. This was such a fun like nut to crack throughout this.
Yeah,
So
it was
thank you
great.
so much.
Hopefully you got some useful stuff there. I could
Oh, of
talk
course.
about for hours this, so
No, me too. This was so fun. I am thank you so much for joining me and just being able to chat about something that I think both is close to both of our hearts and many others that will watch this.
my pleasure. It was a lot of fun.
Thank you. And thank you everyone for listening. We'd be nothing without you. I hope that you enjoy this and you are able to check out other episodes like this and you are able to check out Jeff in the description. Thank you guys so much and I hope you have a lovely day.